The rain was coming down in solid sheets, the kind that tries to wash Boston straight into the harbor. My windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle, squeaking a frantic rhythm against the glass. I was late. My night shift at the railway diner started in 20 minutes, and I was cutting through the back alley of O'Malley's pub, a shortcut I instantly regretted. I am Eva Carter. I am 31 years old. I am a single mother. And I was driving a minivan that smelled faintly of spilled apple juice and old crayons. That is when I saw him. He stumbled out of the bar's back door, a shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows of the alcove. He was not the usual kind of drunk O'Malley's spit out. He was wearing a suit. A real suit. The kind that costs more than my car, tailored perfectly to his shoulders even as he staggered. It was ruined. Dark hair was plastered to his skull by the rain. When he braced himself against the brick wall, I saw the dark stain on his white shirt cuff. He had tried to wipe the blood from his nose. He looked up, scanning the alley, and his eyes met mine through the windshield. They were not drunk. They were sharp, focused, like chips of blue ice in the sudden glare of my headlights. A door slammed somewhere behind me. A different car. 3 men climbed out of a dark sedan parked near the dumpsters. These men fit the scenery. They wore heavy jackets, and they moved with a purpose that had nothing to do with getting out of the rain. They moved toward the man in the suit. My hand froze on the gear shift. This was not my business. My business was Mia. My business was scraping tips to cover the rent. I should have reversed. I should have driven away. But then the world split open in red and blue. A patrol car, its lights flashing silently in the downpour, turned into the alley. It moved slow, a predator cruising. The 3 men stopped. They looked at the cop car, then at the man in the suit, then at me. They were trapped, and I was a witness. The man in the suit looked at my minivan. It was a 2008 model, dented on the passenger side, the sliding door notoriously sticky. I do not know why I did it. Maybe it was the nurse in me, the part of me that used to run toward trouble in an emergency room. Maybe I was just tired of always running away. I hit the button on my dashboard. The minivan's side door groaned, protested, then slid open with a heavy electronic sigh. "Get in!" I yelled through the closed window. He did not need to be told twice. He launched himself from the wall and dove into the back of my van, sprawling across the floor. He landed hard on a pile of Mia's library books. "Move!" I snapped. I unbuckled, climbed into the back, and grabbed Mia's spare raincoat. It was bright yellow, covered in little ducks. I threw it over his torso. I grabbed her empty booster seat from the far back and slammed it down near his head. It was a pathetic disguise, a pile of childhood clutter, but it was all I had. I scrambled back into the driver's seat just as the heavy tap-tap-tap landed on my window. I jumped, my heart trying to escape my chest. A police officer stood there, his face young and wet, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. I powered down the window. Cold rain sprayed my face, sharp as needles. "Evening. Ma'am, everything all right back here?" His flashlight beam was blinding. It cut through the darkness, sweeping the interior. I found the tears. It was not hard. They were right behind my eyes, always waiting. "Officer, please," I choked out, forcing a sob. "My daughter, she's sick. She's burning up. A high fever." I gestured frantically to the back, to the pile of yellow plastic in the booster seat. "I'm just trying to get her home. She's 7 years old. She finally fell asleep, but..." I let my voice crack. "Please, my Mia is so sick. I need to get her to bed." The officer's face softened. He was just a kid. Maybe he had kids of his own, or maybe he just hated to see a mother cry. His beam rested on the duck-covered raincoat. He saw the car seat. He saw a stressed-out mom in a beat-up van. He did not see the expensive, bleeding man hidden underneath it. "All right, ma'am. Apologies," he said, stepping back. "We just had a call about a disturbance. You drive safe now. Hope the little one feels better." Thank you," I whispered. I rolled the window up. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I put the van in drive. As I did, A voice rumbled from the floor, so low I almost missed it. "Keep driving south." I pulled out of the alley, my tires slipping on the wet pavement. I did not look at the officer. I did not look at the 3 men who were now being questioned. I just drove. I turned onto the highway, heading south. The rain was a solid gray wall, turning the world into a blur of watercolor streaks. Red taillights and green signs dissolved into the night. I checked my rearview mirror. It is a mother's habit. You are always checking the back seat, a black sedan. It was not the same one from the alley, but it felt the same. I passed an exit. The sedan stayed with me. I passed another exit. It was still there. 2 lanes over, keeping pace. My stomach coiled into a cold, hard knot. They were not police. They were following us. They wanted him. I was just the delivery driver, and I had a 7-year-old daughter at home waiting for me. The sedan pulled closer. I could see the silhouette of the driver. My old nurse brain clicked in. Assess, plan, act. My mom brain took over. Evasive maneuvers. Years of driving with a screaming toddler, of dodging sudden naps and spilled juice boxes, had made me a better driver than any stuntman. I signaled right for the next exit. The sedan moved right, anticipating me. At the last possible second, I cranked the wheel hard left. The minivan, bless its terrible suspension, screamed in protest. I cut across 2 lanes of traffic, tires hydroplaning for a terrifying second, and aimed straight for the hospital exit on the far left. The black sedan shot past the exit, trapped by its own speed. I did not slow down. I raced up the ramp and into the parking garage of my old hospital, the place I had worked for 6 years before my life fell apart. I drove up 3 levels to the staff-only section I used to park in, a dark corner hidden behind a concrete support pillar. I killed the engine and the lights. For a long moment, the only sound was the tick of the cooling engine and the distant rumble of the city. "They are gone," and I said, my voice hoarse. I turned on the dim interior light. From the pile of ducts and plastic, the man emerged. He sat up, pushing the booster seat off his chest. He looked terrible. The cut above his eyebrow was deep, bleeding freely now. He was pale, but his eyes were still sharp. He watched me. "Stay put." My voice was firm. The nurse was back. I reached under the passenger seat and pulled out my old trauma kit. I never went anywhere without it, a habit I could not break. I unzipped it and pulled out antiseptic wipes, butterfly bandages, a roll of gauze, and medical tape. "Hold still," I commanded. I leaned into the back. My hands, which had been shaking uncontrollably, were suddenly steady. This, I knew. Cleaning wounds, applying pressure, closing tissue. He smelled like expensive whiskey, wet wool, and the sharp copper tang of blood. He did not flinch as I cleaned the gash. He just watched my face, his expression unreadable. "You were a nurse," he stated. It was not a question. "I used to be," I said, applying the butterfly strips to pull the wound closed. "This will hold until a real doctor can stitch it properly." I taped a square of gauze over it. Done. I sat back in my seat, the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving a cold dread in its place. "Eva Carter." I said. "I do not know why I told him my name." He nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory. "Luca Moretti." The name hit me like a physical blow. Moretti. Not just a Moretti, the Moretti family. The name whispered in news reports about the waterfront union, about shipping logistics, about restaurants that never seemed to have any customers. The name nobody said out loud. I had just pulled the head of the Boston outfit from a back alley brawl and lied to the police for him. He reached into the pocket of his ruined suit jacket. He pulled out something small and heavy. He pressed it into my hand. It was a silver coin. It was old, worn smooth, with a strange crest on it I did not recognize. It was heavy in my palm. My skin tingled where his fingers had brushed mine. "A debt," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured. All traces of the drunk man were gone. "We owe each other." He opened the van door. The concrete air of the garage felt cold. "Wait here for 10 minutes, he instructed. "Then go to your work. You will be safe tonight." He paused, one foot on the pavement, and looked back at me. His face was half in shadow, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. "Tomorrow," he said, and his voice was so calm it chilled me to the bone. "Tomorrow, I will pay the debt. I will not pretend this never happened." It was not a threat. It was not a promise. It was a statement of fact. And that absolute certainty was the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. Then he was gone, melting into the shadows of the parking garage as if he had never been there at all. I waited. I counted to 600. Slowly, my heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird in a tiny cage. Then I started the van and drove to the railway diner. My shift, my real life. I parked in my usual spot. I looked at my reflection in the diner's big plate glass window. The neon "open" sign cast a pink glow on my face. The rain slid down the glass, distorting my features. Eva Carter, 31, single mom, waitress, and now... What I looked down at the heavy silver coin still clutched in my hand. I had crossed a line tonight. I knew it, and I was terrified I had just dragged my daughter Mia to the other side with me. I pushed the heavy glass door open. The silver coin was a cold, solid weight in my jeans pocket. The railway diner smelled like burnt coffee and frying onions. It was 10:30 at night. Rosa, the owner, was wiping down the chrome counter, her small, round body moving with exhausted efficiency. She looked up, her face etched with worry lines that had nothing to do with me being late. "Eva, honey, you look like you saw a ghost," she said, her voice gravelly. I forced a smile. "Just the rain, Rosa. It is a bad one." I grabbed my apron, the cheap polyester scratching my neck. I tied it tight, a piece of armor. This was my reality now. Not scrubs, not a trauma bay, an apron and a name tag that said Eva. I used to be Nurse Carter. I worked the graveyard shift in the emergency room at Boston General. I was good at it. I could handle a multi-car pileup, a gunshot wound, or a code blue without breaking a sweat. I thrived on the chaos, on the high-wire act of saving lives. Then I handled something they did not want handled. I saw a doctor, a very powerful doctor with a surgical practice that brought in millions, falsify a patient's chart to cover a medication error, a fatal error. I filed the report. I followed procedure. I did what I was supposed to do. And the system did what it does to people who follow procedure when it costs money. They did not fire me. That would have been too clean, too obvious. They bothered me out. They launched an internal investigation into my charting, looking for any mistake I had ever made. They cut my hours, citing budget constraints, but hired 2 new nurses the same week. They assigned me to inventory in the basement, counting bandages and saline bags. They made me the troublemaker, the one who did not play nice. It took 6 months, but they broke me. I resigned before they could find a way to take my license. So now I balance plates instead of IV bags. I took orders for sunny side up instead of stat chest x-ray. It was honest work. It paid the bills, mostly. The diner sat right on the edge of South Boston, pressed up against the train tracks that cut the neighborhood in two. During a lull, around 1 in the morning, I stood by the window, wiping down ketchup bottles. I stared out that same window I had looked into earlier. On this side of the tracks, it was old brick, triple-decker walk-ups, and corner stores with faded awnings. On the other side, gleaming towers of glass and steel were rising up, reflecting the moon. Gentrification. That is the polite word for it. Around here, we called it Bayline redevelopment. They were buying everything. Little blue and white signs popped up on lawns like stubborn weeds. We buy houses, cash fast. They were squeezing the life out of the neighborhood, block by block. Rosa was worried they were coming for the diner next. She said their lease was up soon. My shift ended at 6 in the morning. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city smelling washed clean, which was a lie. The air just smelled like wet concrete and diesel. I drove the minivan home. The engine rattling, I parked 3 blocks away. the closest spot I could find in the resident permit zone. My apartment is small. It is a rental, 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs quietly, my legs aching from the shift. I unlocked the 3 deadbolts, a nightly ritual. The first thing I saw was the blanket fort. It took up the entire living room, a massive structure of dining chairs and sofa cushions, draped with every sheet I owned. Mia was asleep inside it, her breathing soft and even. She is 7 years old. She is whip-smart and funnier than I am, with a serious face that makes her jokes even better. She's the only reason I am still breathing, the only thing that makes sense. I peeked inside the fort. She was curled up with her flashlight and her favorite library book about astronomy. And next to her, leaning against a cushion, was her umbrella. It was bright red, with a single yellow lark printed on the fabric. It was her favorite thing in the world. She said it kept the gray days away. I closed the apartment door softly. As I did, the door across the hall opened a crack, a sliver of light and the smell of cinnamon. "Eva misses," Donnelly whispered. She was already dressed for the day, her gray hair in perfect, tight rollers. She wore a thick, quilted housecoat. "Morning, Mrs. Donnelly." I whispered back, "Tough shift." She peered at me over her glasses. "The usual, just coffee and complaints." She pushed a small, foil-wrapped package into my hand. "Banana bread. I made extra." The bananas were turning. Mrs. Donnelly was my lifeline. She used to be a court secretary for 35 years. Before she retired, she still used an ancient flip phone that snapped shut with a satisfying thwack. She watched Mia sometimes when my shift ran late or school let out early. She saw everything in our building. She knew more about legal loopholes and city ordinances than any lawyer I could ever afford. "You look tired, dear," she said, her sharp eyes scanning my face. "More than usual." "It was the rain," I said again. I felt the coin in my pocket, heavy as a judgment. She nodded, but she did not look convinced. "Well, eat, sleep. You are a good mother, Eva." She closed her door, the lock clicking softly into place. Inside my apartment, I sat at the tiny kitchen table. A small, faded icon of a saint I did not know the name of hung on the wall. Left by the previous tenants, I kept it there. I needed all the help I could get. I pulled out my server's notebook. I counted my tips from the night. $47. Not great. Enough for groceries tomorrow, but not enough for the electric bill. I looked at the pile of mail I had left on the table. The electric bill. The overdue notice from the gas company. And then there was the other mail. The letters that came in plain white envelopes, with no return address. Just my name and his, Aaron Cole, my ex-husband. He was a gambler. He had a smile that could charm anyone and a sickness that made him bet on anything. Cards, horses, the color of the next car to pass. He disappeared 2 years ago, just after Mia turned 5. He left me with Mia, and he left me with his debts. At first, the calls were from banks, then collection agencies. Lately, they were men who did not identify themselves, men who knew where I worked, men who knew Mia's name, men who knew what time she got out of school. I dropped my keys on the counter. My keychain, it was a single heavy pewter knight. My father gave it to me before he passed away. He was a chess player, quiet and thoughtful. "Life is chess, Eva," he used to tell me. "Not checkers. You have to think 2 moves ahead. And remember the knight. He's the only one who can jump over the other pieces. He moves sideways to go forward." I had been moving sideways for 2 years, trying to jump over Aaron's mess, trying to protect Mia, trying to keep us afloat with cheap, durable things. My old boots, my 10-year-old winter coat, this apartment, I pulled the silver coin from my pocket. It was heavier than my tips. Earlier than the keychain, Luca Moretti. I had rescued a shark. A man who swam in waters so deep and dark I could not even imagine them. A man whose name was linked to violence. And he had debts that were not measured in dollars, but in blood. I turned the coin over in my hand. It was smooth, ancient. Aaron had dragged me into the shallow, dirty end of the underworld, the part with petty criminals and desperate threats. And last night, I had just dived head first into the deep end to save its king. I looked at the blanket fort, at the small, safe world I had built from cheap fabric and secondhand furniture. Who exactly did I just save? And what happens when he comes to pay the debt tomorrow? I put the coin on the table, right next to the overdue electric bill. They look like they belong together. Two different kinds of trouble, two impossible demands. I did not know which one scared me more. Sleep was a joke. I managed maybe 2 hours, waking up with a gasp every time a truck rumbled past on the street. My heart convinced it was a black sedan coming for me. Mia, oblivious, was already at the kitchen table when I stumbled out, drawing a complex diagram of a rocket ship powered by rainbows. I made her breakfast, kissed her goodbye for school, and left her with Mrs. Donnelly. My bones ached. The diner was quiet when I started my next shift, the lull before the late morning rush. I was running on pure caffeine and the dregs of adrenaline. The silver coin was in my pocket, a familiar weight now. I was wiping down the counter when Rosa gasped. I looked up. Outside, on the street, a line of 3 black cars had pulled up. They were identical. They were shiny enough to reflect the gray Boston sky. They were not Bayline redevelopment. They were something else. The diner went silent. Sal, the cook, stopped grilling onions. 2 truckers in booth 4 paused with forks halfway to their mouths. The diner door opened. The little bell tinkled, a cheerful sound that was completely wrong. Luca Moretti stepped inside. He was not the man from the alley. That man had been desperate, bleeding and covered in mud. This man was immaculate. He wore a dark gray suit that fit him like a second skin. His black hair was perfectly combed. The only sign of last night was a small, clean white bandage over his left eyebrow, exactly where I had taped the gauze. His blue eyes swept the diner once, taking in everything, and then they landed on me. He walked to the counter and sat on one of the chrome stools at my station. He placed a small, simple bouquet on the counter, white carnations. "Coffee," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried black. My hands were steady. I poured the coffee. I placed the mug in front of him. I refused to look scared. "You are a waitress now," he observed, his eyes on my name tag. "I am," I said. He reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out Mia's yellow, duck-covered raincoat. It was perfectly folded, clean, and pressed. He slid it across the counter. "Thank you for the loan," he said. Then he pulled out a plain white envelope. He slid it next to the coat. I looked at it. "What is this?" "Payment," he said. "I do not want your money. It is not a request," he said, his voice still quiet, but with an edge of steel that made my skin prickle. "It is a debt paid for you. No strings attached. 3 months of your rent." My breath hitched. 3 months. That was the gas bill, the electric bill, and the breathing room I had not had in 2 years. "I cannot," I whispered, pushing it back. He put his hand on it, stopping me. "You can. You will. I do not like outstanding debts, Eva." He took a sip of his coffee. He looked at me over the rim. "I apologize," he said, so low only I could hear, "for bringing you into that. It was not my intention." "Right," I said, my voice sharp with sarcasm. "You just stumbled into my van by accident." His eyes held mine. "I did not expect anyone to stop, especially not you." He paused. "Did anyone follow you home after you left the garage?" I thought of Mia. I thought of the fear that had kept me awake. I lied. No one. He nodded, but he looked like he did not believe me. It did not matter. He stood up, leaving the coffee untouched. He put a $50 bill on the counter, next to the mug, for the coffee, and he said, he looked at the white carnations, then at me. "Enjoy your shift." He turned and walked out. The 3 black cars pulled away from the curb in perfect, silent synchronicity. The diner started breathing again. "Kid," Sal called from the grill. "Who the hell was that?" "Just a customer," I said, my voice shaking. I grabbed the envelope and the raincoat and shoved them under the counter. That night, I was on edge. I held Mia a little tighter during story time. I double-checked the 3 locks on my door. Mrs. Donnelly had taken Mia for the afternoon, so I had managed a few hours of real sleep. I still felt hunted. At 8 o'clock, Mia was in her blanket fort, humming to herself. I was washing dishes. A knock came. It was not Mrs. Donnelly's polite tap. It was a hard, impatient sound. I looked through the peephole. A man I did not recognize. He wore a cheap, shiny suit and was chewing gum, his jaw working side to side. I opened the door. Just a crack, keeping the chain on. "Eva Carter," he asked. His voice was slick. "Who are you?" "A friend of Aaron's," he said. "He owes some people a lot of money, and since he is not here, that debt falls to you." My blood went cold. I'm not married to him anymore. His debts are not mine. The law might say that. Our accounting says different. His eyes slid past me, into my apartment. He saw Mia's red umbrella by the door. "Nice place. You got a kid. You need to leave," I said, though, trying to push the door closed. He put his foot in the jam, blocking it. The cheap leather of his shoe scuffed my welcome mat. "I do not think so. See, we know about your trouble at the hospital. We know you are on your own. It would be a real shame. A real shame. If someone called Child Protective Services, told them the kid's mom is hanging out in alleys with strange men, that she is not providing a stable home. They take kids away for less, you know?" I froze. This was it. My worst fear. He had found the one threat that would paralyze me. "Get out," I whispered, my voice trembling with a rage that was so deep it choked me. "I just want to talk about a payment plan. Eva." He grinned, and it was all teeth. He pushed the door harder, the chain straining. "She said to get out." The voice was not mine. It came from the end of the hallway, near the stairs. The man in the shiny suit froze. His grin vanished. I looked past his shoulder. Luca Moretti was standing there. He was just standing. He was not wearing a suit, just dark pants and a plain black sweater. His hands were in his pockets. He was not threatening. He was not moving. He was just there. A block of shadow and stillness. The man in my doorway seemed to shrink. He looked at Luca, and all the color drained from his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost, a very specific, very dangerous ghost. I was just leaving," the man stammered. He pulled his foot back. "Yes," Luca said. His voice was flat. "You were—" The man did not look at me again. He practically ran down the hall and scrambled down the stairs. I was left leaning against the door frame, my knees weak. Luca walked slowly down the hall. He stopped a few feet from my open door. He did not try to come in. He did not look inside. He just looked at me. "He will not be back," Luca said. You followed me." I accused him, my voice shaky. "I had someone make sure you were safe. It seems I was right to." "I do not need your protection." "Yes, you do," he said, his voice gentle. And that was worse than the steel. "Good night, Eva." He turned and walked away. I watched him go. Then I closed the door. Sliding all 3 deadbolts home, I slid to the floor, my back against the wood, and finally let myself shake. He had known I lied. He had sent someone to watch me. He had just saved me. The debt was not paid. It was deeper. The next day at the diner, the air was thick with despair. I found Rosa in the back office, her head in her hands, crying silently. A formal, legal-looking letter was on the desk. "Rosa, what is it?" "They are doing it. Eva," she wept. "Bayline redevelopment. They bought the building from the landlord. They are not renewing our lease. We have 30 days to clear out. My father built this place." 30 days. The words echoed in my head. My job was gone in 30 days. I felt the walls closing in. Aaron's debt collectors. Luca's protection. And now, Bayline redevelopment. The same company squeezing the life from our neighborhood was taking my job. I was on my break, sitting on a milk crate in the back alley, when he found me. This time, there were no black cars. He just appeared, walking up the alley as if he owned it, which I was starting to realize he probably did. Your boss is upset, he said. Bayline is kicking her out, I said, too tired to be polite. They are kicking us all out. He nodded, as if this was old news to him. I have a proposition for you, Eva. I stood up. I'm not interested. I have enough propositions. This is a job, he said. A real one. My grandmother, my Nona. She lives in the North End. She is stubborn. She needs medical supervision. She has a heart condition. She keeps firing every nurse we hire. So hire another one. She needs someone who is not afraid of her. She needs someone who is not afraid of me. He looked at the bandage over his eye. She needs a good nurse. I heard you were one of the best. I stared at him. How did you... I pay debts. I also do my homework, he said. I will pay you 4 times what Boston General paid you. Cash per week. 4 times. It was a staggering amount of money. It was get Mia out of this neighborhood money. It was shut down the debt collectors for good money. But it was his money. I am a waitress, I said stubbornly. You are a nurse, he countered, and I need one. I thought of the man in my hallway. I thought of Mia, humming in her blanket fort, oblivious to the sharks circling her. This was a deal with the biggest shark of all. But maybe it was true what they said. Maybe the safest place to be was right next to him, not in his path. I could use the money, and I needed information. If I was going to protect Mia, I needed to know what I was up against. All right, I said. I will do it, but we have terms. He raised an eyebrow. This is a job. I am your grandmother's nurse. That is all. You stay out of my life. I stay out of your business. He considered this. He looked at me, his face serious. Then he nodded. A civilized arrangement, he agreed. We do not touch each other's private lives, not unless we are invited. He held out his hand, not for a handshake. In his palm was a set of keys. She lives on Hanover Street. Start tomorrow, 8 in the morning. I took the keys. They were cold, like the silver coin. I'm not scared of you, Luca. I said it was a lie, but I needed to say it. He almost smiled. It was a tiny, unsettling twitch at the corner of his mouth. Good, he said. You should be scared of her. My Nona is much tougher than I am. He walked away, leaving me in the alley with a set of keys to a life I never wanted. I looked at them, then at the diner's back door. I was starting to see him as a real person, a man with a cranky grandmother, a man who paid his bills and kept his word. And that was infinitely more complicated, more dangerous than the simple monster I wanted him to be. I had just made a deal. Eva Carter was now the private nurse for the Moretti family. My father's words came back to me. Life is chess, Eva. Remember the night. I just hoped I was not just a pawn in his game. Hanover Street was not my world. It was the North End, a place of old brick, narrow cobblestone streets, and the constant, delicious smell of garlic and baking bread. Luca Moretti's grandmother lived on the top floor of a pristine brownstone that overlooked a small, ancient church. The apartment was dark, filled with heavy, carved furniture, lace doilies, and a suffocating quiet. Nona Moretti was terrifying. She was a tiny woman, no more than 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes as black and sharp as obsidian chips. She sat in a large armchair by the window, a thick silver rosary draped over her fingers. She sized me up in one long, silent appraisal. So, she said, her voice a dry rustle, you are the nurse, the emergency room nurse. I am, Ma'am, Eva Carter. I opened my medical bag. I'm just here to check your blood pressure and make sure you are taking your medications as prescribed. He fired the last one, a girl with painted nails. She smelled like cheap perfume. I do not like cheap perfume. I will try to keep my scent neutral, I said, wrapping the cuff around her thin arm. She watched me work. She did not like me, but she seemed to respect the efficient way my hands moved. While I counted her pulse, my eyes drifted to her desk. It was covered in old, leather-bound books. They did not look like novels. They looked like ledgers. I finished my checks. Everything was stable. She was as healthy as a horse. Aside from the mild arrhythmia Luca had mentioned, "You are not like the others," she said, pulling her sleeve down. "I'm just here to do a job. Mrs. Moretti." "Nona," she corrected me. "He calls me Nona. You will too." She picked up the heavy silver rosary. "My grandson. He's a good man, but he is in a deep ocean, and he is trying to build a bridge instead of learning to swim." I did not know what to say to that. I just packed my bag. "He told me what you did," she said quietly, her eyes on the crucifix. "In the alley. That was a foolish thing. A brave, foolish thing. I was just trying to help. We Morettis," she said, her voice dropping. "We are built on gentilezza, kindness. It is a law. It is older than any gun, any knife." She looked up, her black eyes boring into mine. "It is not the kindness of weakness. It is the kindness of a full accounting. You do a service, it is returned. You pay a debt, it is closed. You save a life. That debt is never closed. It is paid forever." She was explaining the silver coin. She was explaining the rent money, the car that now sat outside my building every night, the man in my hallway. It was not a gift. It was an entry in a ledger older than her furniture. My new life became a strange, split reality. Mornings with Nonna in the quiet, oppressive wealth of the North End, afternoons picking up Mia, trying to pretend we were normal. Nights. I still took shifts at the diner. I could not let Rosa down. Not yet. We only had a few weeks left. The connections started to surface, like bodies rising in a dark river. I was at Nonna's, watching the local news while she napped. There was a press conference. A man with a politician's smile and perfect hair was standing at a podium. The banner behind him said, "Bayline Redevelopment Building, Boston's Future." "Assistant District Attorney Hargrove," the news anchor chirped, praising the new urban renewal project. Luca walked in while the man was speaking. He stood behind me, watching the screen. "This project," Hargrove said, smiling, "is a triumph of public and private cooperation. We are cleaning up the blight and creating safe, modern homes." "He is a snake," Luca said, his voice a low growl. I turned. "You know him." "I know of him. He's on the payroll. Baylines. Ricci's." The name dropped into the room like a stone. Paolo Ricci. I had heard the name. The other family. The ones who did not bother with legitimate fronts. The ones who were all blood. "Bayline Redevelopment is Paolo Ricci," Luca said, walking to the window. "It is his washing machine. He and Hargrove are partners in cleaning up the blight. But the diner is in their way, so they are crushing it." Nonna appeared in the doorway, her rosary in her hand. "Paolo Ricci," she spat, like the name was poison. "He understands only violence. He sees your new shipping contracts, your restaurants, and he thinks you are weak. He thinks you are soft. Nipote." "Let him think," Luca said, his back to us. "The old ways are ending. Nonna, the old ways," she whispered, "are the only reason you are still standing." A few days later, I saw what she meant. I was walking home from Nonna's, taking a shortcut through a street I did not recognize. I saw a small crowd gathered outside a large, imposing iron gate. A woman was on her knees on the sidewalk, weeping. Two huge men in suits stood just inside the gate, watching her. I recognized the crest on the gate. It was Ricci's headquarters. "Please," the woman screamed, her voice breaking. "He is dead. Your site was not safe. My husband is dead." My blood ran cold. I walked closer. "It was a construction accident," one of the men said, his voice bored. "Bayline is not responsible. You are trespassing. Go home. Go home. I have no home. He is gone." She tried to stand, to push at the gate, and one of the men shoved her. He did not shove her hard, but she was off balance. She fell backward, hitting the pavement hard. The nurse in me took over. I ran forward. "Get away from her," I shouted. The men looked at me, uninterested, and closed the gates with a heavy, final clang. I knelt beside the woman. She was young, her face raw with grief. "Are you hurt? Let me see." "They killed him," she sobbed, clutching my arm. "My Marco. He was a good worker. He said the crane was not safe. He told the foreman, and it It fell. A bayline accident. They killed him, and they call it an accident. I helped her to her feet, my old, useless rage burning in my chest. This was the hospital scandal all over again, but with steel beams instead of medication, a cover-up. A woman left with nothing. I gave her the $20 in my pocket and walked her to the bus stop, my hands shaking. I was quiet when I got home. Mrs. Donnelly was waiting for me in the hallway, holding a bag of her banana bread. "You saw something, did you not?" she asked, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "A woman. Her husband died at a bayline site. They just threw her out." "Mrs." Donnelly's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "Come inside. Eva, I have something for you." In her apartment, surrounded by doilies and pictures of her grandchildren, she went to an old, locked desk. She pulled out a small, old flash drive. "My Frank," she said. "My late husband, he was a court clerk for 40 years. He was quiet, but he saw everything. He was a good man. He hated bullies." She held out the flash drive. Bayline tried this before, about 10 years ago. They had a different name then, but it was the same people. Richie. Hargrove was just a rookie then, but he was in on it. They bribed a judge to make it all go away. Frank. He made copies. Before the files were sealed. I stared at the small piece of plastic. "Why give this to me?" "Because I hear things." She said, "I know who you're working for. I see the car that watches this building, and I remember you from the hospital. You have an instinct for evidence. Eva, it is why they pushed you out." Her hand closed over mine. "Be smarter this time. Dear Way, do not be a witness. Be a prosecutor." That night, I could not sleep. I sat in the dark living room, the flash drive in my hand. Mia's blanket fort was still up, but she was asleep in her bed. I heard her stir, her small feet patting on the floor. "Mommy, I cannot sleep." "Me neither, baby." She climbed into my lap, bringing her tablet with her. "Can I show you my video I filmed the moon this morning? It was so big." "Sure, honey." I kissed her head, needing the comfort of her. She turned on the tablet. The video was shaky, filmed from her bedroom window. Our apartment building overlooked a strip of warehouses and the train tracks. "See?" she whispered, pointing. The moon was right there. The video panned down from the sky. It was dark, maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I saw them. Trucks. They were pulling up to a warehouse. The one I'd always assumed was empty. The logo on the side of the trucks was unmistakable. Even in the dark bayline redevelopment, they were so loud. "Mommy?" "They woke me up," Mia murmured, her head resting on my chest. I watched, my heart frozen. The trucks were backed up to the loading dock of a warehouse. I zoomed in on the grainy footage. On the side of the warehouse, faded but still visible, was a painted logo, a stylized R. Ricci's warehouse. Men were unloading large, heavy wooden crates. They were not construction supplies. They were not drywall. They were sealed, dark and heavy. Bayline, Ricci, crate deliveries in the dead of night. My mind flashed to the widow, the dead worker, the diner, the corrupt assistant district attorney. It was all one big, tangled, rotten knot, and my daughter had just accidentally filmed the middle of it. I saved the video. I hid the flash drive. I felt like I was holding a bomb. 2 nights later, my phone rang. A blocked number. I almost did not answer. "Hello?" "Eva." My stomach turned to ice. A voice I had not heard in 2 years. "Aaron, Eva, do not hang up. Please." He sounded terrible. His voice was thin, choked with fear. "What do you want, Aaron? I need to see you. I have to. It is about Mia. It is about her safety." "You lost the right to talk about her safety when you walked out," I snapped. "No, you do not understand," he hissed. "I am in trouble, real trouble. I owe money. Not the usual guys. I owe Paolo Ricci." Ricci, the name again. Of course. He knows. Eva. He knows who I am. He knows I was married to you, and he knows. He knows you are working for Moretti. "What did you tell him, Aaron?" I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. "Nothing, I swear. He just knows. He wants me to be bait. He wants me to get to you." To find out what you know about Moretti. He said if I do not, he'll kill me. But he said if I do, he might just hurt you to send Moretti a message. I hung up the phone. I leaned against the wall, my whole body trembling. The danger was not just at the diner or in the North End. It was my past. It was Aaron. It was here. It was closer than I could have imagined. The next night was my last shift at the railway diner. We were closing for good at 2 a.m. It was awake. Rosa, Sal, and I were just cleaning up, the last of the truckers having left an hour ago. I was in the back, tallying the last receipts. I smelled it first. Not old grease, not burnt coffee, gasoline. I heard a whoosh from the front, like a giant breath, followed by the sound of glass shattering. I ran out. The front of the diner was a wall of orange flame. The curtains, the vinyl booths, everything was catching. Rosa Salfire, get out the back. I ran to the small office. Rosa was standing there, frozen, staring at the flames. Rosa, move! I grabbed her arm and yanked her, pulling her toward the back alley. Sal was right behind me, coughing. We burst out of the back door just as the windows blew out. We fell onto the wet pavement of the alley, gasping for air, the roar of the fire filling our ears. Sirens wailed in the distance, but it was too late. The diner was gone. Rosa was sobbing, her body shaking. They did it! They really did it! I sat up, my lungs burning. The orange light of the fire lit up the entire alley, brighter than any streetlight, and I saw it, half hidden under a pile of wet cardboard near the dumpster. Something small, something metal. It was glinting. I crawled over, my hands raw from the pavement. I picked it up. It was hot from the fire. It was a silver coin, worn smooth, heavy, with a familiar crest. It was identical to the one Luca Moretti had given me. I stared at it, the heat searing my palm. This was not an accident. This was not a random act of vandalism. This was a signal. Someone had left this for me to find. Someone wanted me to know that they knew. They knew about the coin. They knew about me. I looked at the roaring flames that had been my job, my safe place. I was standing in the middle of a war I did not understand, and I had just been declared a soldier, whether I liked it or not. My hands were still covered in soot from the diner fire when I called him. I did not go to Nona's. I used the new, clean cell phone he had given me. The one he said was for emergencies. I considered this an emergency. He left it for me, I said, no greeting. I was parked in my minivan, watching the sun rise over the smoking skeleton of the railway diner. A silver coin, just like yours. It was in the alley. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Where are you? Luca's voice was flat, cold. I'm at the diner, or what is left of it. Stay there. Do not move. 10 minutes later, his car was there. Not the fleet, just one. He got out and looked at the burnt shell of the building. His face was like granite. I held out the coin. He looked at it, then at me. This was Ricci, he said. He's sending a message. To me. Through you. He's sending more than that. I said I was vibrating with a cold, clear rage. The fear was gone. I am done being a message, Luca. I am done being a pawn. I pulled out the flash drive from Mrs. Donnelly. I pulled out my phone. This is what I have. I said I felt my nurse brain click back on. The part that triages, that assesses, that makes a plan. Bayline redevelopment is Paolo Ricci. That is his money laundering machine. Assistant District Attorney Hargrove is his legal protection. Mrs. Donnelly's late husband copied files from a sealed case 10 years ago. It proves the bribery. It proves the connection. Luca watched me, his expression unreadable. And this? I said, opening the video on my phone. This is from my daughter's tablet. She filmed it from her window 3 nights ago. I showed him the grainy footage, the Bayline trucks, the Ricci warehouse, the wooden crates. That warehouse is 2 blocks from my apartment. I said, he's not just cleaning money, he's moving contraband. I saw the widow of the man who died, Marco. Ricci is killing people and Hargrove is burying the paperwork, and they are using the new social housing project as the excuse to launder all of it. I finally stopped. I looked him in the eye. You want to get out. You want to be legitimate. You cannot do it while he is still breathing, and you cannot do it by killing him. You meet him with violence. You lose. You become him. So what do you suggest, Eva? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. We call the police. Hargrove is the police. No, I said, we do not call the police. We call the feds, and we do not just give them a flash drive. We give them the whole operation. We give them the crates, and we give them Ricci. All at once. He will never let us get that close. He will let me, I said. I am a nurse. I know how to handle an emergency. He stared at me, finally understanding. What are you planning? Ricci loves a construction accident. We will give him one. A fake 911 call. A man down at his warehouse. I will be the first responder. I use my old credentials. I get inside. I get eyes on those crates. Absolutely not, he said, his voice final. He stepped closer. It is too dangerous. I will not have you on the front line. You already put me on the front line, I said, my voice rising. The minute you got in my van, I was there. The minute your man stood in my hallway, I was there. Ricci burned down my job, my life, Luca, to send you a message I am not hiding. I am not your responsibility to protect. I am your only way out. This is the chess move, the knight's move. If you want to live clean, then let me help you do it right. His blue eyes searched my face. He saw I was not afraid. I was just done. He nodded. Once. What do you need? First, Mrs. Donnelly. I showed her the video. I told her the plan. My Frank always said the federal office had one good man, she said, her face grim. She went to her ancient Rolodex and pulled out a card. Agent Riley. Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's been trying to build a case against Hargrove for a year. He just needs something that will stick. He's clean. Second, Mia. This was the hardest part. I sat her down in the blanket fort. Mia, baby, I need you to play a very important game with me, I said, holding her small face in my hands. I set up her tablet. Mrs. Donnelly's friend, Agent Riley, he is a good guy. He's like a superhero, but he needs our help to stop the bullies. I showed her a single, large, red button on the screen. When I send you a text message, it will just be the word go. The second you see it, you press this button. It will send our location and a live video to Agent Riley. Can you do that for Mommy? Just press the button and then go straight to Mrs. Donnelly's apartment and lock the door. She looked serious, her eyes wide. Are you going to stop the gray days, Mommy? Yes, baby, I whispered, my throat tight. We are going to stop them for good. That night, the warehouse district was silent. I drove my minivan. My old trauma bag on the passenger seat. It was filled with my usual supplies, plus 3 micro cameras, courtesy of Luca's security team. Luca was 2 blocks away, in his car, unarmed. He was the lookout. If I was not out in 10 minutes, he was coming in. Agent Riley and his teams were staged 5 minutes away, waiting for the signal. I took a deep breath. I put the van in drive. I sped toward the warehouse, then slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop just outside the main gate. I jumped out, screaming, "Help, please! Someone help! A man is down! He fell! I think his neck is broken. I am a nurse. Someone call 911. The 2 guards at the gate looked at each other, confused. My panic was real. My voice was professional. They bought it. One of them fumbled for his phone while the other hit the button to open the gate. He's back there. By the loading dock. He's not breathing. I ran past them, my bag slamming against my hip. I burst into the massive, cavernous warehouse. It smelled like dust and chemicals. And there they were. The wooden crates from Mia's video, stamped medical supplies, humanitarian aid. A foreman ran up to me. What is this? Who are you? Where is the man who fell? I yelled, pushing past him. I am a nurse. I need to get to the patient. Nobody fell, no. Then it is a heart attack, a stroke. Take me to your crew. I was pure adrenaline, a whirlwind of medical authority. I created chaos. I ran to the loading dock, where they were actively moving crates. I saw one crate was partially open. I need the defibrillator, I shouted, dropping my bag. Where is it? In the confusion, I turned my back, ripped the lid off the open crate. It was not medical supplies. It was bricks of white powder, thousands of them, opioids. I fumbled, my hands shaking. I activated the first camera, sticking its magnetic base to the metal shelving inside the crate. The second went under the steel of the loading dock table. The third I clipped to the strap of my own bag. I pulled out my phone. I texted Mia. "Go. There is no accident, nurse." I froze. Paolo Ricci walked out of a glass office I had not seen. He was short, wide, and holding a small pistol. He recognized me. "You," he sneered. "The waitress. Moretti's new girl." His guards grabbed my arms, slamming me against a pillar. "That was a good trick," he said, walking up to me. "Very smart, but you were too late." Headlights flooded the warehouse. A single car, Luca's car, roared onto the dock, blocking the only way out. Luca stepped out of the car. His hands were empty, held slightly away from his body. "Let her go, Paolo," Luca said. His voice was calm, but it echoed in the huge space. "Moretti, you are soft. You have always been soft." Ricci spat. "You come here alone with no gun, you are a fool, and you brought her right to me." "This is between us," Luca said, taking a step forward. "It was." Ricci snapped his fingers. A side door opened, and 2 more guards dragged someone out. My heart stopped. It was Aaron. My ex-husband. He was beaten, his face a mask of terror. "Eva!" he shrieked. "I'm sorry I told them nothing." Ricci grabbed Aaron and put the pistol to his temple. "Stop right there. Moretti or the gambler dies? A fitting end. Yes, you try to go clean, and his trash kills you both." Luca stopped, 20 feet away. He was trapped. Aaron was sobbing. I looked at Aaron, the ghost who had ruined my life. I looked at Luca, the man who was risking his to save it. The cameras were rolling. The feds were coming. I just needed to change the board. "Let him go," I said. My voice was loud, clear, and on gate. It cut through the tension. Ricci laughed. "You are in no position to—" "He is nothing," I said, staring at Ricci. "He is bait. He's worthless. You said it yourself. You do not want him. You want me. I am the one who works for him. I am the one who got in here." Ricci's smile faded. He looked at me. At my chin held high, he understood leverage. "Eva." "No," Luca said, his voice raw. "It is okay, Luca." I looked at him, and I willed him to trust me. "It is a trade." I took a step toward Ricci. "Let Aaron go. Take me. I am the prize." Ricci thought for a second, then grinned. He shoved Aaron so hard he fell. "Go on. Get out." Luca moved like lightning. I grabbing Aaron's shirt, pulling him to his feet, and throwing him behind the safety of the car. In the same motion, Ricci grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking my head back. He pressed the cold, hard barrel of his gun against my temple. The alarm in my head was screaming. "Now, Moretti," Ricci yelled, his face inches from mine. "On your knees, hands on your head, or she dies." I could see Luca's face. It was torn. This was the one thing he had not planned for. "Do it, Luca," I choked out, the gun pressing hard into my skull. "It is over." He looked at me, his eyes full of a pain that was not physical. Slowly, he started to lower his hands, to surrender. I was not going to let that happen. I was a nurse. My bag was at my feet. The guard who had grabbed me was still standing next to me, his arm holding my waist, while Ricci's eyes were locked on Luca. I let my right hand drop to my bag. I did not need to look. I grabbed the first 2 things I felt, a heavy metal flashlight and a thick elastic compression bandage. "On your knees!" Ricci screamed. I moved. I slammed the flashlight, not at Ricci, but backwards into the wrist of the guard holding me. I felt the snap of bone. He howled. I spun into his body, using him as a shield. I brought the flashlight up, smashing it into his jaw. As he fell, I snatched his arm, planted my foot, and pulled with my entire body weight, a perfect textbook shoulder dislocation. He collapsed, screaming in agony. It took 2 seconds. Ricci turned, his eyes wide with shock, his gun swinging toward me. He was too slow. The instant I moved, Luca moved. He had not been surrendering. He had been waiting. He crossed the distance in 3 long strides. He did not go for the gun. He hit Ricci's wrist, a sharp upward strike that sent the pistol flying across the concrete floor. Luca's counterattack was not a fight. It was a dismantling, a precise strike to the throat, a palm heel to the solar plexus, a brutal kick to Ricci's knee. Paolo Ricci, the man who terrorized the city, crumpled to the ground, gagging. The warehouse was suddenly silent, except for the whimpering of the guard, and then a new sound. Sirens. Not 1 or 2. It was an army. The warehouse doors, the ones I had run through, burst open, blue and red lights flooded the space, men in vests marked FBI swarmed in, guns raised, Federal Bureau of Investigation hands in the air. Nobody move. They cuffed Ricci. They cuffed his men. They surrounded us. Agent Riley, a tall man with a tired face, looked at me, at the camera on my bag, and then at the open crate. He nodded. "We have it, Miss Carter. We have it all." Luca stood beside me, his chest heaving. He did not touch me. He just stood there, a solid wall of presence, making sure I was safe. Across town, Assistant District Attorney Hargrove was in his car. He had heard the federal chatter on a scanner. He was running. He sped through the quiet streets of the North End, taking a shortcut he thought no one knew. He did not see the new security camera on the steeple of the Old North Church. He did not see Nonna Moretti, standing on her balcony, watching his car speed past. She turned on her bright porch lights, flooding his car in a perfect circle of illumination for the camera. She picked up her old silver flip phone and made a call. As Hargrove's car disappeared, the ancient church bells began to toll, ringing out across the sleeping city, a heavy, final judgment. The aftermath was not quiet, but it was orderly. The chaos of the warehouse firefight was replaced by the methodical, grinding gears of the federal justice system. The news was obsessed with it for weeks. Paolo Ricci, Assistant District Attorney Hargrove, and the entire board of Bayline redevelopment were indicted on a slew of charges: racketeering, conspiracy, money laundering, manslaughter for the death of Marco and other workers. My name, thankfully, was kept out of it. I was a confidential informant. My testimony, along with Agent Riley's case, Mrs. Donnelly's flash drive, and the crystal-clear video from my bag was enough to seal the case. Luca Moretti's name was mentioned, but in a way I had not expected. He was portrayed as a cooperating witness, a man from an old Boston family who was helping the government dismantle a criminal enterprise that had threatened his own legitimate businesses. He was trading. He gave them Ricci's entire network, and in return, he was allowed to move forward, to scrub the blood from his own ledger and fully embrace the gentilezza his grandmother spoke of. He was transitioning, right in front of the city's eyes, from a mafia boss to a businessman. His shipping logistics and restaurant chains were now officially clean. He was keeping the law of kindness, but he was doing it in the light. Life in my neighborhood began to breathe again. The pressure was off. The blue and white "We Buy Houses" signs vanished overnight, like a frost melting in the morning sun. The most amazing thing happened at the railway diner. The community rallied. The story of Rosa losing her lease, coming right after the fire, hit a nerve. People were tired of being pushed out. A community fund was started. Truckers, college students, even the local bank branch pitched in. I was there with Rosa when the letter came. She had raised enough to make a new offer to the bank that now held the property, post-Bayline asset seizure. She opened the letter, her hands shaking. She read it once, then twice. She just stared at it. "What is it, Rosa?" I asked. "It is a mistake," she whispered. "What is... it says?" "It says the mortgage on the building has been paid. In full. It says the property is clear. An anonymous benefactor, the fund. We can use it to rebuild. We can buy the building outright for $1. She started to cry, but this time they were not tears of despair. They were tears of pure, unadulterated shock. I knew, instantly, whose anonymous hand had done it. No signature, no fanfare. Just a debt paid, a kindness, as Nona would say, in full accounting. The diner was saved, they decided to rebuild it, but this time, as a cooperative, Rosa was the majority owner, but Sal, and me, and the other waitresses, we all had a small piece. It was ours. With Richie's threat gone and the strange, quiet protection of Luca's world now a solid, legitimate presence, the man who had been watching my building disappeared. The fear of a knock on the door, of a man in a shiny suit, was gone. I took the envelope of rent money Luca had given me, the one I had never spent. I took the first week's pay from Nona, which was more money than I had ever held at one time. I walked to the bursar's office at the community college. I re-enrolled in the nursing program. It was just part-time, just 2 classes to start, but it was enough to get my certifications back, to refresh my credentials, to become Nurse Carter again. But it was not enough. I thought of Marco's widow, the woman weeping outside Ricci's gate. I thought of the families left with nothing by Baylines accidents. I went to a small legal aid office and started a nonprofit. I called it the Platform Fund, named after the train tracks that split our neighborhood. The place where the diner had stood, I seeded it with the settlement money I received as a victim of the diner fire and as a confidential informant. It was a small, humble start, but it was a fund dedicated to helping the widows and injured workers of construction sites. It provided legal aid and emergency cash. I would not let anyone else be shoved aside like that widow. It was my way of balancing my own ledger. The last piece of my old life was Aaron. He was in protective custody, a federal witness against Ricci's organization. Agent Riley arranged a meeting in a sterile government building. He looked small. The charm was gone, burned away by genuine fear. He was just a weak man who had made a lifetime of bad choices. "Eva," he said, his voice cracking. He could not meet my eyes. "They have the papers." "Aaron," I said, my voice flat. I was not there for apologies. "I know. I will sign them." He was signing away his parental rights to Mia. Forever, he was giving her to me, fully and completely, in exchange for a new life somewhere in Arizona or Wyoming, with a new name. "I'm sorry, Eva, for everything I'd never wanted ye." "It does not matter what you wanted, Aaron," I said, stopping him. "It only matters what you do now." He signed the papers. His hand, the one that used to hold mine, shook. I watched him get led away by a federal marshal. I did not feel hatred. I did not feel anger. I just felt quiet. I felt pity. Maybe, but mostly, I felt the sharp, clean relief of a final door closing. I had given him conditional forgiveness, not for his sake, but for Mia's. Her history was now clean. She was free from his debts, from his name, from his shadow. She was just mine. A week later, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived. It was not a bill. It was an invitation, written in sloping, elegant script. Nona Moretti requested the pleasure of my company, and Mia's, for Sunday dinner. I was terrified. Mia was thrilled. "Are we going to the castle? Mommy, it is just an apartment, baby, a very old one." When we arrived, the apartment was transformed. The heavy, dark furniture was still there, but the oppressive quiet was gone. The place was filled with people. With the smell of roasting garlic and basil, it was loud. A long, massive dining table, one I had never seen, was set up in the living room. It was covered in a white linen cloth, heavy silver and glowing candles. Nona, looking like a tiny queen in a black lace dress, kissed Mia on both cheeks. "Ah, La Bambina, you are welcome here." Luca was there, at the head of the table. He was not the boss. He was the grandson. He served wine. He carved a roast. He laughed at jokes I did not understand. He looked at me and Mia, and he smiled, a real smile. It changed his entire face. We ate. We ate pasta and roast and salad and bread. And for dessert, Nonana brought out a tray of perfect, wiggling panna cotta. Mia ate 3, after dinner, as people were drifting away. Nonana sat with Mia on the sofa. "Your mother tells me you have a red umbrella." Nonana said, "It got lost, Nonna." Mia said, her voice sad. I had thrown the old one away. It was cheap, and a gust of wind had broken 2 of the ribs. Ah! Nona reached behind the sofa. She pulled out a package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with a silk ribbon. Mia unwrapped it. It was an umbrella. It was bright, brilliant red. It was not a child's toy. It was made of thick, shining fabric, with a polished wooden handle and a strong, heavy frame. "This is a North End umbrella," Nona said, her voice firm. "It is not afraid of the wind in this house. La pioggia, the rain. It is a friend. It washes things clean. You remember that." Mia just hugged the umbrella, her face buried in the red silk. Nona looked at me over Mia's head. Her eyes were not black and hard. They were warm. I realized, family. A few weeks after that, I was home. It was a Saturday. I had just finished my classes for the day. Mia was at Mrs. Donnelly's. I was thinking about starting my homework. I was thinking about how normal, how blessedly boring my life had become. Then a knock. Not a hard, demanding knock. Not a friendly tap. Just a solid, polite knock. I looked through the peephole. It was Luca. He was alone. He was wearing jeans and a dark gray Henley shirt. He looked like a normal person. I opened the door, my heart doing a strange, unfamiliar flip. "Hi." I said, "Hi." He said, he was not empty-handed. He was holding a gallon can of white paint and a new paintbrush. He gestured with his chin toward my small balcony, where the iron railing was flaking and showing patches of rust. "I noticed that," he said. "It was bothering me." He was not holding flowers. He was not making declarations. He was not here as the mafia boss, or the wealthy businessman, or the man I had saved. He was just a man, with a can of paint, here to fix my railing. I stepped aside to let him in. He walked past me, smelling like clean soap, and set the paint can down on my welcome mat. He turned to me, his blue eyes serious. "I am not here to claim anything, Eva," he said, his voice quiet. "I am not here to collect on a debt. I am just here to keep." He did not say what he was here to keep. A promise. My safety. My company. It did not matter. I looked at the can of paint, and I looked at him. Justice had a price. It had cost me my job, my anonymity, my sense of safety. It had cost Rosa her diner and Marco's widow her husband. It was a high, terrible price. But as I stood there, in my safe, quiet apartment, with my daughter playing next door and a good man waiting to paint my balcony, I knew, for the first time, that it was worth it. I closed the door. "The brushes are in the kitchen," I said, "and I will make us some coffee and—" He smiled, and this time, I smiled back. The trial was a formality. It was quick, clean, and brutal, with the video evidence from my bag, the warehouse inventory, Mrs. Donnelly's flash drive, and Aaron's terrified testimony. The federal case was airtight. Paolo Ricci was found guilty on all counts. He received a sentence so long that he would never see the outside of a federal prison again. Assistant District Attorney Hargrove was disbarred. His political career did not just end, it evaporated. He was found guilty of conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The fall from grace was absolute. The city's newspapers, the ones that used to print his smiling face, were merciless. And the Bay Line redevelopment project, the monument to their greed, was seized by the city. In a moment of justice so rare it felt like fiction, the entire project was handed over to the Public Housing Authority. It was fast-tracked. It became what Hargrove had promised on television: real, actual, affordable housing. The first apartment, a 3-bedroom unit on the top floor, was offered to Marco's widow. I was there when she got the keys. The platform fund paid to furnish it. Luca, true to his word, finalized his transformation. He publicly and legally dissolved the violent arm of his family's holdings. He poured his resources into the legitimate logistics company and the restaurants. He made a point to hire the former construction workers from the Bayline sites, the men Marco had worked with. He did not just give them jobs. He gave them pensions and the best health insurance money could buy. He was honoring the law of kindness on a corporate scale. building his new bridge in the bright light of day. I'm telling this story from my balcony. The railing is smooth and white under my hands. The rust is just a memory. It is a warm Tuesday in August. I can smell the city, the familiar mix of diesel, the harbor, and the bakery down the street. It does not smell like fear anymore. Below, in the small patch of green grass our building shares, Mia is playing. She is 7 years old, almost 8. She's throwing a frayed rope for a dog. He is a scruffy, happy mutt we adopted from the city shelter 2 months ago, a mix of everything. With one floppy ear and a tail that never stops wagging, Mia named him Diesel, and he's chasing the rope, blissfully unaware of the complex world around him. He's just happy to be safe. I know the feeling. Luca is here with me. He's leaning against the brick wall, holding a glass of iced tea I made. Comes over often. There are no grand gestures, no whirlwind romances. He fixed my leaky faucet last week. I helped him organize Nona's new medication schedule. We have Sunday dinner in the North End every single week. It is slow. It is real. He watches Mia and Diesel for a long moment, a small, genuine smile on his face. She is happy, he says, his voice quiet. We both are. I reply. He turns to me. His eyes that same intense blue I remember from the alley. That night feels like 100 years ago. I was not entirely honest with you, Eva, he says, about that night, the night in the alley. My heart, which has been beating so steadily for months, gives a small, anxious flutter. How? I was not drunk, he says. Not really. I'd been drinking. Yes, but I was in control. Richie's men were waiting for me outside O'Malley's. I knew it. They had a checkpoint, a patrol car that was not a real patrol car, waiting to stop me. My drunk act. That was to make them underestimate me. I was planning to stagger past their checkpoint to create a scene and slip away in the confusion. He looks down at his hands, which are wrapped around the cold glass. My part was calculated. I knew they were there. I knew I had to get past them. He looks back up at me, and his gaze is so direct, it takes my breath away. But I did not calculate you. I never, in a million years, thought a woman in a beat-up minivan, late for work, would stop. I never planned on you sliding that door open. Eva, that was Grace. My plan was just survival. You were something else. I am quiet for a long time. Processing this, it does not change anything, but it sharpens the edges of the memory. He was not helpless. He was just tactical, but I was real. I reach into the pocket of my jeans. I still carry it sometimes. My keychain with the pewter knight and the heavy silver coin. I hold the coin out on my palm. It is warm from my body. And this, I say, you said it was a debt. We owed each other. He looks at the coin, and for the first time, I see him look truly vulnerable. It is a debt, he agrees, but it is not mine. It belonged to my grandmother, my grandfather. He was a hard man. He built the family, but she was all gentilezza, all kindness. When he died, she started a secret fund. She called it the Law of Kindness Fund. It was for people like Marco's widow, for people crushed by the world we lived in, a quiet, anonymous way to balance the scales. He touches the coin, still in my palm. His finger is warm. There is no key. This is the combination to the safe where the ledgers are kept, the code. It is an old family mark. He gently closes my fingers over it. When I gave it to you, I was just making a promise. I was marking you as mine to protect. But now, it is something else. The fund is still active. I have been running it since my father passed, but I do not want to run it alone. I look at him, confused. Luca, what are you saying? I am saying, Eva Carter, he says, his voice serious, that I am making you a co-trustee. You and your platform fund, you have a better instinct for this than I do. You know how to do it right. You know how to heal. I just know how to pay. I'm looking at the silver coin in my hand. It is not a token from a mafia boss. It is not a down payment. It is a key. It is a responsibility. I look at Luca. He's not a monster from the shadows, and he's not a prince from a storybook. He's just a man, trying to build a bridge. Just like Nona said, he's a man who chose to pay his debts with paint cans and health insurance, instead of with violence and envelopes of cash. I'm not telling you a fairy tale. I'm not telling you that a waitress saved a dark king. He did not rescue me. I rescued myself. He just showed up and held the ladder steady while I climbed out. This is an ethical contract. It is a story about a man who learned to pay his debts the right way, and a woman who learned to trust again, but only when the boundaries were drawn in bright, permanent ink. I chose to love a man, not because he was dangerous or powerful or rich, but because when he had the choice between violence and kindness, he looked at me, and he chose kindness. I slipped the coin back into my pocket. Next to my knight, I lean against the railing he fixed. It is strong. It is solid. It will not break. "Diesel," Mia yells from below, her voice bright as a bell. "Bring it back, good boy." I watch my daughter play in the late afternoon sun, safe and free. It is not a perfect piece. It is not an illusion. It is just enough. And after everything, enough feels like a miracle. Thank you for listening to this story. Where in the world are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below so we can share our thoughts. Please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories. And like this video, we would also be so grateful if you would support us by pressing the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.